I would like you to imagine for a moment you are a woman. You have a medical illness, one that makes pregnancy nearly lethal to you. Or perhaps you are not financially stable. You live paycheck to paycheck. Or maybe you have just found yourself a victim of assault. In any one of these situations, you find yourself pregnant. We live in a post Roe v. Wade America, and you live in a heavily pro life state. You have no access to transportation. The closest medical center is many hour drive out of your reach, and even then, the government has decided it is not your choice whether you get to seek life-saving medical treatment or not. What do? Abortion has been a long-held legal precedent protected by the court since 1973, closely tied to the right to bodily autonomy and privacy as all Americans share under the law. As a woman myself, faced with the realities of living in a post-Roe v. Wade world, I find the overturning unconstitutional. It is a great travesty with real-world consequences, and I see now a better time than ever to permanently codify the right to abortion into law. To neglect a woman's right to abortion is to neglect their equal right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as protected under the 14th Amendment. Further, we should not allow religious ideation to influence what we deem legally permissible and uphold the ideals of the separation of church and state. Finally, as we live in a democracy, we should follow the will of the people, particularly when it comes to social issues such as these. Time and time again, the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of, as we understand it, our right to bodily autonomy and privacy. There is perhaps no court ruling more intrinsic to our well-known understanding of this right than that of court decision in 1891, Union Pacific v. Botsford. Here, the Supreme Court rules no right is held more sacred or is more carefully guarded by the common law than the right of every individual to the possession and control of his own person. This is as written in official court documents. This is, as we understand it, that the government has no right to intrude upon our person and the decisions we make about our bodies. The precedent of intrinsic bodily autonomy has been held up again and again. This can be seen in court cases such as Cruzan v. Missouri Department of Health in 1990, in which it was found that bodily autonomy in medical decision-making was voted in favor of. This stretches on to more infamous cases, such as in 1965 of Griswold v. Connecticut, in which the court ruled that the decisions within marriage are not for the government's knowledge and cannot be infringed upon by the state. Decisions such as these have paved the way for our intrinsic right to decide on our bodies. Our bodies, our choices. The court ruling of Roe v. Wade itself in 1973 has made it abundantly clear. The 14th Amendment protected and assured our right to bodily autonomy, and this implicitly included the right to abortion. After all, how could you possibly draw the line at one sex's right to ownership of their body and not the other? And now you might suggest that as we have established a right to bodily autonomy, this would include things such as vaccines, right? And there was a vaccine mandate, wasn't there? Well, for those that would compare the two, I would suggest that this mandate didn't apply to everyone. Federal workers, healthcare workers, and large employers were those affected. And anecdotally, I myself worked at a large corporation and was never forced to vaccinate. And you might still cry out, but still, it was forced for some of us. However, I would suggest that when the collective good of a nation relies heavily upon herd immunity in times of great disaster, perhaps it should be. Our greatest power as a species is our community, and as such, it logically stands to reason we collectively should partake in something for the collective good. And I won't go into statistics of the effective rate of vaccines, as this is an entirely different discussion. However, we are speaking about something that affects all of those with whom you interact, and another in which only your individual health is affected. One in which elderly and the immunocompromised and the young were completely unable to vaccinate, and whose health relied upon the greater herd immunity. Even here we can see how abortion quickly becomes a question of morality for many people. In fact, it is a long-known hard religious stance for a great many of those who do keep the faith. However, regardless of one's religious standing and moral code, we cannot as a nation rely upon religious beliefs of the few to prevent the many from engaging in an activity. I posture it is not our place to impart subjective morality on all. We are not a monolith. We are not all Christian. To force others to conform to a particular set of religious beliefs is antithetical to the foundation of our nation. We hear this outcry everywhere, on news, perhaps in our social circles. You can even hear it proselytized on the street corners in our city from time to time. In a Pew Research survey of some 35,000 people, it was found 52% of those polled who believed abortion should be illegal in all or most cases used religion as their primary guidance on their moral views of abortion, where only 5% of those that also believed abortion should be illegal based their decision upon science. The words separation of church and state do not appear in the U.S. Constitution. Still, however, the concept is enshrined in our First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The recent and fervent claims that America is a Christian nation are false. It is implicitly stated in our country's framework that we should stay this way. To refute this is to refute the very essence of which the nation was created and disrespect our forebears. Further, as we are a nation created upon the ideals of democracy, we should continue to prioritize the will of the people above the loud few. In a recent poll taken by CNN, we can find that 69% of Americans disapproved of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Even further, they go to note that 82% of those who strongly disapprove of this decision say that federal politicians should work to pass laws to ensure national abortion access. If we at our most basic and most core values do not respect the collective will of the people, we can no longer continue to call ourselves a democracy. If we do not bow to the will of the people, whose will are we bowing to? As one legal mind and political activist, Mary Turner, puts it so eloquently in her article, My Body, Whose Choice? A Case for a Fundamental Right to Bodily Autonomy, she writes, fundamental rights are critical because they ensure that issues society values the most are left up to the discretion of individuals, regardless of the politics of their elected representatives. I would like us all to seriously look at which values it is that we wish to uphold in our nation. If we believe that these values are only to be guaranteed to the few, are we not a nation built upon freedom of person, belief, and life, of democracy and liberty? We stand at the precipice where the few demand to curtail the many, and the will of the people continue to go unnoticed. At a time when sanctity of individual right that has long been enshrined in our legal and moral framework stands to be stripped from us. Our duty as a people is to reaffirm the commitment to a society where personal freedoms are respected, and where the government cannot be allowed to make decisions forced upon the private life and liberty of its people. We must honor the values upon which this nation has been founded and assure a future where justice and equality are not for the few and are not just ideals, but realities for all of us. Thank you.